Hello and welcome back to part 2 of this lesson on indirect or reported speech. In part 1 we looked at indirect statements and the changes you had to make to things like pronouns, tenses and time markers. In this part we're going to look at indirect questions, including polite questions and some specific cases. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, please click here to look at that part first. If you have already watched part 1, then you're ready to move on to part 2, indirect questions. So, let's begin. Indirect or reported speech. Part 2, questions. Let's look at the reporting verb for questions. The most common reporting verb for questions is ask. You have a choice to specify the person after ask or not. If you specify the person, do not use to. So you can say he asked, or he asked me, he asked him, he asked Jane. Avoid saying he asked to me or he asked to him, etc. Right, let's have a look at what changes. Other than the changes that happen to statements, there is one more thing you must do when you formulate an indirect question. That is, you need to change the question form back into the statement form. Let's look at some examples. He asked me, "When can I call you back?" Let's look at the indirect question. He asked me when he could call me back. So, as in a statement, I has changed to he, can has changed to could, and you notice that now we've changed the question back into a statement. He asked me when he could call me back, not he asked me when could he call me back. Let's look at one more example. They asked us, "Where will you be?" Let's look at the indirect question. They asked us where we would be. Once again, you has changed to we and will has changed to would, as in a statement, and the question has returned back to a statement form. They asked us where we would be. Not, they asked us where would we be. Now be careful with yes-no questions, because when you have a yes-no or a closed question, you need to connect the two parts, the reporting verb and the reported question, with the word if. For example, we asked Andrew, "Have you bought a new game?" Let's change this into an indirect question. We asked Andrew if he had bought a new game. One more example. They asked us, "Are you French?" Indirect. They asked us if we were French. Right. Let's look at some polite questions. We sometimes ask an indirect question to be more polite or formal. We formulate these questions with expressions such as, "Could you tell me?" or "Would you mind telling me?" "May I ask?" "I was wondering." Let's look at some examples. The direct question would be, "Where did you go?" Indirect question, which sounds a lot more polite, is, "Could you tell me where you went?" Another example, the direct question is, "How old are you?" And the indirect question, which sounds more polite, "May I ask how old you are?" And one more example. The direct question might be, "How much did you pay?" Asking it indirectly, we could say, I was wondering how much you had paid. Note that with I was wondering, you must change the tense of the original sentence because this expression is in the past. I was wondering. Right, let's look at some specific cases. When we report a sentence that has a specific function, for example, inviting, apologizing, making a request, etc., it is better to use a specific verb. For example, in the sentence, he said to me, "Slow down, please." This is a request. Therefore, the most appropriate verb for this sentence would be ask. He asked me to slow down. Right, let's look at the next example. He said to him, "Stop shouting." This is an order. The most appropriate verb for reporting an order is tell. He told him to stop shouting. Moving on to our next example. She said, "Why don't we write a letter?" This is a suggestion or a recommendation. Therefore, the appropriate verbs to use are suggest and recommend. She suggested writing a letter, or she recommended writing a letter. Right, let's look at the next sentence. I said to her, "Would you like to dance?" This is an invitation, and therefore the most appropriate verb to report this sentence is to invite. I invited her to dance. Of course, you could also report it just as a basic question, in which case you could say, I asked her if she wanted to dance. However, I invited her to dance is more appropriate and also shorter. Let's look at another example of a specific case. She said to them, "Shall I drive you home?" This is an offer to do something for someone. Therefore, the verb to use is offer. She offered to drive them home. Once again, you could just report it directly by saying she asked if she should drive them home. However, you can see that offered is more appropriate and shorter. And one final example. We said to him, "Sorry for the inconvenience." This is an apology. So, as you might guess, the appropriate verb to choose is apologize. We apologize to him for the inconvenience. Once again, you can report the sentence directly, but see how long it gets. We said to him that we were sorry for the inconvenience. Right then, that's all for the lesson. Let's move on to some exercises. Put the following questions or sentences with a specific function into indirect speech. For example, he asked, "Has anyone seen Jim?" Change it into indirect speech. He asked if anyone had seen Jim. Okay, let's begin. Number 1. I asked James, "How long do you have to wait?" I asked James how long he had to wait. Number 2. She asked her husband, "Are you working tomorrow?" She asked her husband if he was working the next day. Number 3. He asked his boss, "Will I be getting a raise next year?" He asked his boss if he would be getting a raise the following year. Number 4. He asked, "Why is everyone laughing?" He asked why everyone was laughing. Number 5. Jill asked Peter, "What are you doing this afternoon?" Jill asked Peter what he was doing that afternoon. Number 6. The children asked, "Can we go home now?" The children asked if they could go home then. Number 7. He said to me, "Why don't we take a break?" A suggestion. He suggested taking a break. Number 8. She said to them, "Would you like to join me for a walk?" An invitation. She invited them to join her for a walk. Number 9. She said to me, "Shall I drive you home?" An offer. She offered to drive me home. Number 10. Jane said to Paul, "Could you turn the TV down, please?" A request. Jane asked Paul to turn the TV down. Well, that's the end of the exercises. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. As you know, you can now go to our website, anglolink.com, for more explanations and exercises and to access all my video lessons. Thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you in my next lesson. Bye now.